Captain Jake Morrison walked across the metal floor of his ship. The U.S. Liberty was not pretty to look at. It had thick steel walls welded together like a puzzle. Old mining equipment stuck out from its sides. The ship looked like someone had built it in their backyard using spare parts. Jake stopped at a big window and looked out at space. Hundreds of alien ships floated around his vessel. These ships were beautiful. They had smooth curves and bright lights. They looked like they were made of crystal and starlight. Next to them, the Liberty looked like a flying junkyard. "Sir, the Alien Council wants to talk to you again," said Lieutenant Amy Sullivan. She was young but smart. Her uniform was clean and pressed, unlike Jake's, which had oil stains from working on the engines. Jake nodded and walked to the communication center. On the screen appeared 3 different aliens. One looked like it was made of living crystal. Another seemed to be made of flowing gas inside a glass suit. The third was more robot than living being, with metal parts and glowing eyes. "Human Morrison," said the crystal being in a voice like wind chimes. "We have reviewed your species again. You are still not ready to join our council as equals." The gas creature spoke next. Its voice sounded like air moving through pipes. "Your technology is too simple. Your ships are made of basic metals. You have no energy shields or plasma weapons." The robot alien's voice was flat and emotionless. "Your species shows promise as workers. You could mine asteroids or build simple structures for the advanced races." Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "We appreciate your offer, but humans want to be treated as equals." The 3 aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. The crystal being spoke again. "Look at your ship, human. It is barely held together. Our children build better toys. Your weapons are projectiles and explosives," added the gas creature. "We stopped using such crude tools millions of years ago." The robot alien leaned forward. "Accept your place, Human Morrison. Be grateful we allow your species to exist in our galaxy." Jake looked at each alien face on the screen. "We'll think about it," he said, and cut the connection. Amy walked over to him. "Captain, they're not wrong about our technology. Their ships are much more advanced than ours." Jake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Amy, let me tell you something about humans. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've learned to make do with what we have. Sometimes the simple way is the better way." He walked to another part of the ship, where Commander Ben Parker was working on the engines. Ben was covered in grease and sweat. He had tools scattered around him and was cursing at a piece of machinery. "How are the modifications coming, Ben?" Jake asked. Ben wiped his hands on a dirty cloth. "Good and bad news, Captain. The good news is that our railguns are working perfectly. The bad news is that our armor is so thick, we're slower than a space turtle." Jake laughed. "Speed isn't everything, Ben. Sometimes you need to be able to take a hit. The aliens don't seem to think so," Ben said. "I've been watching their ships. They're fast and their weapons are powerful, but their hulls are thin. One good hit would crack them open like eggs." Dr. Helen Brooks joined them. She was the ship's science officer, and the smartest person Jake knew. "Captain, I've been studying the alien transmissions. Their technology is incredible, but it has weaknesses." "What kind of weaknesses?" Jake asked. Helen pulled out a small device and showed them some numbers. "Their shields work by bending energy around their ships. Lasers, plasma, particle beams, all deflected away. But their shields don't work against solid objects moving fast enough." Ben's eyes lit up. "You mean our railguns would go right through their shields?" "Exactly," Helen said. "They've never had to defend against kinetic weapons because every advanced species uses energy weapons." Jake felt a plan forming in his mind. So we're the primitive species with the primitive weapons that their advanced defenses can't stop. That's right, Helen nodded. And there's something else. I intercepted some of their military communications. They have standard battle tactics that every species uses. Energy weapons at long range, shields up, elegant formations. Boring, Ben said with a grin. Very boring, Helen agreed. They fight. Like it's a dance, not a war. Jake walked back to the window and looked at the alien ships again. They were still beautiful, but now he saw them differently. They were glass cannons, powerful but fragile. Their crews had probably never been. In a real fight where someone was trying to kill them with nuclear weapons and steel bullets. Amy joined him at the window. Captain, what are you thinking? I'm thinking about our history, Amy. Humans have fought wars on land, sea, air, and now space. We've used clubs, swords, guns, tanks, planes, and missiles. We've learned to adapt to any battlefield. He pointed at the alien ships. These beings have been at peace for so long, they've forgotten how to really fight. They have tournaments and competitions, but they've never faced an enemy that wants to ram a nuclear warhead down their throat. Ben walked over carrying a wrench. So what's the plan, Captain? Jake turned to face his crew. These were good people. Amy had grown up on Mars, learning to survive in harsh conditions. Ben had worked on mining ships where one mistake could kill everyone. Helen had studied at Earth's best universities, but chose to serve in space instead of staying safe on the ground. The plan is simple, Jake said. We show these aliens what humans do when someone tries to push us around. At that moment, alarms started ringing throughout the ship. Amy ran to her station and checked the sensors. Captain, we're getting a priority message from Earth. The main screen turned on and Admiral Lisa Carter appeared. She looked worried and tired. Jake, we have a problem. The Corvan Empire just declared war on all younger species. They're demanding that every planet with less than 1 million years of space travel surrender immediately. Jake felt his blood turn cold. What about Earth? We have 24 hours to surrender, or they'll send a fleet to destroy every human city, Lisa said. The other council members are advising us to give up. They say the Corvan have never lost a war. What do you want us to do, Admiral? Jake asked. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Jake, the Liberty is our only warship. If you fight, you'll probably die. If you surrender, humanity becomes slaves forever. Jake looked at his crew. Amy stood straighter. Ben gripped his wrench tighter. Helen's eyes were hard as steel. They were all thinking the same thing. Admiral, Jake said, please send a message to the Corvan Empire. Tell them that Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Liberty has a response to their ultimatum. What should I tell them? Lisa asked. Jake smiled, and this time it was a warrior's smile. Tell them to come and take it. 3 days after Jake Morrison sent his message to the Corvan Empire, the first enemy ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. Lieutenant Commander Amy Sullivan was on duty when the sensors picked them up. Captain, to the bridge, she called. Over the ship's communication system. We have visitors. Jake arrived quickly, still putting on his uniform jacket. What do we have, Amy? 3 ships, sir. They're big and moving fast toward Earth. Amy pointed at her screen. The computer says they're Corvan destroyers. Jake studied the enemy ships on the main display. They were sleek and dark, shaped like spears with glowing blue engines. Each one was twice the size of the Liberty. How long until they reach Earth? 6 hours at their current speed, Amy replied. Jake pressed a button on his chair. All hands. This is the captain. Battle stations. This is not a drill. Alarms rang throughout the ship. Ben Parker ran onto the bridge, his clothes covered in engine oil. Captain, the railguns are loaded and ready. Nuclear missiles are armed. The armor plating is as thick as we can make it. Dr. Helen Brooks came up from her lab, carrying a tablet computer. Jake, I've been studying the Corvin ships. They're fast, and their energy weapons are powerful, but I was right about their defenses. Still think our bullets will go through their shields? Jake asked. I'm sure of it, Helen said. Their shields bend energy away from their hulls. A solid chunk of metal, moving at high speed, will punch right through. Jake nodded and sat in his captain's chair. Amy, take us out to meet them. No point in letting them get close to Earth. The Liberty moved away from Earth's orbit and headed toward the approaching enemy ships. The human vessel looked tiny compared to the sleek Corvin destroyers, but Jake felt confident. His crew knew their jobs and their weapons were ready. Incoming transmission, Amy announced. Put it on screen, Jake ordered. The face that appeared was not human. It had metal skin and glowing red eyes. Wires and circuits were visible under clear panels in its skull. When it spoke, its voice sounded like a machine trying to copy human speech. I am Nexus Prime, commander of the Corvin 3rd Assault Group. You are the primitive vessel that sent the insulting message to our empire. Jake stood up and faced the screen. I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Liberty. I wouldn't call our message insulting, just honest. Nexus Prime's red eyes grew brighter. Your species has been judged inferior. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will make your entire planet suffer. Here's a better idea, Jake said. Turn your ships around and go home. Tell your empire that humans don't surrender to bullies. The alien commander made a sound like metal grinding against metal. Impossible. Your ship is ancient technology. Your weapons are primitive projectiles. You cannot defeat 3 Corvin destroyers. Jake smiled. Let's find out. The transmission ended, and the alien ships spread out into attack formation. They were beautiful in a deadly way, moving like dancers through space. Alu energy began building up around their weapon ports. They're charging their plasma cannons. Helen reported, 30 seconds to firing range. Ben, give me full power to the railguns, Jake ordered. Amy, target the lead ship. Aim for the center of mass. Railguns ready, sir? Ben called out. Target locked, Amy confirmed. Got the Corvin ships open fire first. Brilliant blue beams of energy struck the Liberty's thick armor. The ship shook and sparks flew from some control panels, but the hull held firm. Minor damage to outer armor. Ben reported. We're still in good shape. Jake gripped his chair as another blast hit them. Fire railguns. The Liberty's main weapons launched 2 metal slugs at incredible speed. The projectiles were simple, just dense chunks of tungsten, but they moved faster than bullets and hit harder than bombs. The first slug struck the lead, Corvin ship exactly where Amy had aimed. It passed through the energy shields like they weren't even there and punched a hole clean through the alien vessel. The second slug hit a moment later, tearing through vital systems. Direct hit, Amy shouted. The lead ship is breaking apart. On the main screen, they watched the beautiful alien destroyer come apart in a shower of metal and sparks. Its energy shields flickered and died as the ship split into 3 pieces. Prime's voice came over the communication system, full of shock and disbelief. Impossible. Our shields deflected your primitive weapons. How did you? Our weapons aren't energy, you metal-headed fool, Jake replied. They're good old-fashioned chunks of metal moving really fast. The remaining 2 Corvin ships tried a different approach. They moved in a zigzag pattern, trying to avoid the Liberty's railguns, while firing their plasma weapons. The human ship took several more hits, but its thick armor held. Hull damage increasing, Ben reported. But we can take a lot more punishment than they can. Jake watched the enemy ships dance around his vessel. They were fast and graceful, but they were also predictable. Amy, lead your targets. Fire where they're going to be, not where they are. Amy adjusted her aim and fired again. One railgun slug missed, but the other caught a Corvin destroyer as it turned. The impact tore off one of its engine pods and sent the ship spinning out of control. Second enemy ship disabled, Helen announced. The third one is trying to escape. Not today, Jake said grimly. Amy, don't let it get away. The last Corvin ship was trying to reach a safe distance to call for help. It was fast, but the Liberty's railguns had longer range than the aliens. Expected. Amy fired both weapons at maximum power. Both slugs hit the fleeing destroyer within seconds of each other. The ship's rear section exploded in a ball of fire and debris. The front half continued moving for a few more seconds before its systems failed, and it went dark. All 3 enemy ships destroyed, Amy reported with excitement in her voice. Jake sat back in his chair and let out a long breath. Damage report, Ben. Armor is dented and some systems are offline, but nothing we can't fix, Ben replied. We're in better shape than I expected. Helen was studying her instruments with amazement. Jake, do you realize what we just did? We destroyed 3 advanced alien warships with a single vessel. The Corvin have never lost a battle like this. This is just the beginning, Jake said. They'll send more ships, bigger ships. Amy turned from her station. Captain, I'm picking up transmissions from all over the galaxy. Word of our victory is spreading fast. What are the other species saying? Jake asked. Helen checked her translation. Programs. Most of them can't believe it. The Corvin Empire has been the strongest military force in the galaxy for thousands of years. No one has ever beaten them in open combat. Jake stood up and walked to the main window. In the distance, he could see the wreckage of the 3 alien ships drifting in space. It was a warning to anyone who might threaten humanity. Send a message. To Earth, he ordered. Tell them the first attack has been stopped, but tell them to prepare for war. The Corvin won't take this defeat quietly. Ben wiped grease from his hands. What do we do now, Captain? Jake turned to face his crew. They had just won humanity's first space battle, but he knew it was only the beginning. Now we get ready for the real fight. Because after today, the whole galaxy is going to know that humans don't back down from anyone. 2 weeks after the first battle, the Corvin Empire sent their answer. It came in the form of 50 massive warships, each one the size of a small city. They appeared at the edge of the solar system, like dark clouds blocking out the stars. Captain. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, watching the enemy fleet approach. His ship had been repaired, but it looked tiny compared to the armada heading toward Earth. Jake, we can't fight all of those ships, Dr. Ellen Brooks said quietly. She had been studying the enemy fleet for hours. Each one of their dreadnoughts has more firepower than 100 of our ship. Then we don't fight them all at once, Jake replied. He turned to Lieutenant Commander Amy Sullivan. Amy, take us into the asteroid belt. We're going to make this interesting. Amy looked confused. Sir, the asteroid belt is dangerous. One wrong move and we could hit a rock. That's the idea, Jake said with a grin. We know this area better than they do. Ben, how are our engines? Commander. Ben Parker wiped his hands on a cloth. Running smooth, Captain. I've made some improvements while we were waiting. We can move faster and turn quicker than before. Jake pressed a button on his chair. This is the captain speaking to all crew. We're about to face the biggest fleet the Corvin Empire has ever sent. We can't beat them in a straight fight, so we're not going to fight fair. Remember your training, and trust your shipmates. Let's show these aliens what humans do when someone tries to destroy our home. The Liberty moved toward the asteroid belt, a region of space filled with rocks ranging from pebbles to small moons. Most ships avoided this area because it was too dangerous to navigate safely. But humans had been mining asteroids for decades. They knew every rock and every safe path. "Enemy fleet is entering the belt," Amy reported. "They're staying in tight formation." Jake studied the tactical display. The Corvin ships moved like a parade, keeping perfect distances from each other. It was beautiful to watch, but it was also predictable. "There," Jake pointed at the screen. "See that big asteroid? We're going to hide behind it and wait." The Liberty slipped behind a mountain-sized rock and powered down most of its systems. On the outside, the ship looked dead. Inside, the crew waited in silence as the enemy fleet approached. "First group of ships passing our position." Amy whispered. Jake watched 5 dreadnoughts glide past their hiding spot. The alien ships were magnificent, covered in smooth armor and glowing with energy. Their crews probably felt safe inside there. Powerful vessels. "Now," Jake said. The Liberty burst from behind the asteroid like a shark attacking from the depths. Its railguns fired at point-blank range into the rear ship of the formation. The metal slugs punched through the dreadnoughts' shields and tore massive holes in its hull. Before the other Corvin ships could react, the Liberty was already moving again. It dove between 2 asteroids and disappeared from their sensors. "Enemy ship is breaking apart," Helen reported with excitement. 1 dreadnought down, 49 to go. A Corvin fleet tried to pursue, but their large ships couldn't follow the Liberty through the narrow spaces between asteroids. Several times, alien vessels scraped against rocks, trying to chase the human ship. Jake used every trick he had learned. In 20 years of space combat, he led enemy ships into asteroid fields where they couldn't maneuver. He hid behind rocks until alien vessels passed, and attacked from behind. He used the belt's gravity to slingshot around asteroids at high speed. "Second target acquired," Amy announced. She had become expert at hitting moving targets, while the Liberty twisted and turned through space. Another dreadnought exploded as railgun slugs tore through its engine section. The ship's reactor went critical, and the explosion lit up half the asteroid belt. Navigator Sophie Martinez had joined the bridge crew. She was young, but had grown up on mining ships in the belt. "Captain, there's a solar flare building up. If we can lead some enemy ships into its path." "Do it," Jake ordered immediately. Sophie plotted a course that would take them close to the sun. The Liberty's thick armor could handle the radiation, but the Corvin ships with their energy-based systems would be vulnerable. 6 enemy vessels followed them toward the solar flare. As they got closer to the sun, their sensors began to malfunction and their shields flickered. The Liberty waited until the perfect moment, then fired all weapons. 3 more dreadnoughts were destroyed in the solar storm. The remaining enemy ships retreated quickly, their hulls glowing red from the heat. "Enemy fleet is regrouping," Amy reported. "They're trying to surround the entire asteroid belt." Chief Tactical Officer Ryan Cooper had been plotting enemy movements. "Captain, they're learning. They're not chasing us anymore. Instead, they're setting up a blockade." Jake studied the tactical display. The Corvin commander was smart. By surrounding the belt, he could wait for the Liberty to run out of supplies. Or make a mistake. Then we don't wait, Jake decided. "Ryan, show me the weakest point in their formation." Ryan pointed to a section where only 3 ships covered a wide area. "There, sir. But those ships are watching for us. They'll see us coming." "Not if we don't look like the Liberty," Jake said. He turned to Ben. "How long would it take to attach some asteroid chunks to our hull?" Ben's eyes lit up with understanding. "A few hours, sir. We'd look like a drifting rock." "Do it." "Helen, can you mask our energy signature?" "Already working on it," Helen replied. "I can make us look like space debris. For the next 4 hours, The crew worked to disguise their ship. They welded pieces of asteroid to the Liberty's hull and covered the engines. When they were finished, the ship looked like a large, irregularly shaped rock. "Perfect," Jake said, admiring their work. "Now we drift toward their blockade like we're just another piece of space junk." The disguised Liberty floated slowly toward the enemy formation. The Corvin sensors detected it, but their computers classified it as harmless debris. The three blockading ships ignored the approaching rock. When they were close enough, Jake gave the order. "Drop the disguise and fire everything we have." Asteroid chunks fell away from the Liberty's hull, and the ship's weapons blazed to life. At such close range, the enemy ships had no time to raise shields or return fire. All three dreadnoughts were destroyed within seconds. "Gap in the blockade created," Amy shouted. "We're through their formation." The Liberty raced away from the asteroid belt with dozens of enemy ships in pursuit. But Jake wasn't running away. He was leading them into another trap. "Sophie, take us to the gas giant," he ordered. "Let's see how well their fancy ships work in a hurricane." The Liberty dove into the atmosphere of Jupiter's largest moon, using the thick gases to hide from enemy sensors. The pursuing Corvin ships tried to follow, but their energy shields interacted badly with the charged particles in the atmosphere. "Enemy ships are having power problems," Helen reported. "The atmospheric interference is overloading their systems." Jake smiled grimly. "Fire!" At will, the Liberty attacked the confused enemy ships from within the gas clouds. The Corvin vessels couldn't see their target clearly, but the human ship's sensors worked perfectly in the dense atmosphere. 4 more dreadnoughts were destroyed before the remaining ships retreated to open space. The Liberty emerged from the gas clouds like a ghost ship, its hull scorched but intact. "Damage report," Jake called out. "Minor hull damage and some system overloads," Ben replied. "Nothing serious. We're still ready to fight." Jake looked at the tactical display. In 2 weeks of hit-and-run attacks, they had destroyed 15 enemy ships. The Corvin fleet was still powerful, but they were no longer invincible. "Amy, send a message to Earth," he ordered. "Tell them we're still fighting and still winning. And tell them something else." "What, sir?" Jake looked out at the stars where the enemy fleet was regrouping. "Tell them that sometimes the best way to fight a bigger enemy is to make them come to you on your terms. The Corvin have better ships, but we have something they don't." "What's that, Captain?" Amy asked. "We have home field advantage, and we're just getting started." While Captain Jake Morrison fought in the asteroid belt, something unexpected was happening across the galaxy. The news of human victories against the Corvin Empire had spread to every corner of space, and other species were starting to listen. On the mining world of Kepler-7, a reptilian creature named Sorok 9 watched the latest battle reports on his secret communication device. His people had been slaves to the Corvin Empire for 300 years. They dug precious metals from dangerous mines, while robot overseers watched their every move. "The humans destroyed another dreadnought today," Sorok 9 whispered to his fellow miners. "A small ship against the Empire's most powerful warships." An older Sorok looked around nervously. "Keep your voice down. If the overseers hear us talking about rebellion, they will kill us all." "They're killing us anyway," Sorok 9 replied. "Working us to death in these mines. But the humans are showing us that the Corvin can be beaten." That night, Sorok 9 and 12 other miners snuck into the main power station. They had been planning this for weeks, ever since they heard about the Liberty's first victory. Using tools stolen from the mining equipment, they destroyed the generators that powered the robot overseer's dot. When morning came, the mining operation was in chaos. Half the robots were offline, and the Corvin managers couldn't understand what had happened. Production stopped for 3 days while they brought in new equipment. Similar acts of rebellion were happening on dozens of worlds. The aquatic Delphis began sharing intelligence about Corvan ship movements. The crystal-based Valith started jamming enemy communications. Even some younger Corvan units began questioning their orders. Back in the solar system, Jake received an unexpected visitor. Vice Admiral Peter Grant arrived with 12 ships from Earth's civilian fleet. They were converted cargo vessels, mining ships, and passenger transports. Nothing that looked like military vessels. "Jake, good to see you." "Still alive," Peter said as he came aboard the Liberty. He was an older man with gray hair and laugh lines around his eyes. "Earth sent me with reinforcements." Jake looked at the list of ships Peter had brought. "Pete, these are cargo haulers and mining vessels. They're not warships." "They are now," Peter said with a grin. "We've loaded them with nuclear weapons and filled them with volunteers. Miners, merchants, transport pilots, people who wanted to help defend Earth." Dr. Helen Brooks studied the ship specifications. "Jake, this could work. We don't need fancy weapons. We just need to get close enough to the enemy ships to hurt them." Commander Ben Parker was already thinking about modifications. "Captain, I could rig these ships with ramming prows, load them with explosives, and let volunteers pilot them into enemy vessels." Jake felt uncomfortable with the idea. "I don't like sending people on suicide missions." "It wouldn't be suicide if we do it right," Peter explained. "Most of these ships have escape pods. The pilots could ram an enemy vessel, set off the explosives, then escape in the pods. Over the next week, the small human fleet prepared for a different kind of warfare. Ben and his engineering teams worked around the clock to modify the civilian ships. They mounted nuclear warheads on mining vessels and turned cargo haulers into missile platforms. Lieutenant Commander Amy Sullivan coordinated with the new ship captains. Many of them had never been in combat before, but they were eager to learn. "Captain Morrison showed us that humans don't have to fight like the aliens do," explained Captain Ruth Davis of the converted freighter New Hope. "We can make our own rules." The opportunity to test their new tactics came when a Corvan fleet tried to break through to Earth. 30 enemy dreadnoughts moved in formation toward the inner solar system, confident that their remaining numbers would overwhelm the single human warship. Instead, they found 13 ships waiting for them. "This is Captain Morrison to all vessels," Jake broadcast. "Remember the plan. We're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to win, period." The battle began unlike any conflict the galaxy had ever seen. The converted human ships scattered in all directions, refusing to fight in the neat formations that alien species preferred. Some ships attacked head-on, while others came from above and below. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. The freighter New Hope, loaded with nuclear weapons, charged straight at a Corvan dreadnought. Enemy plasma beams struck its thick cargo hull, but the ship kept coming. At the last second, Captain Davis launched herself in an escape pod while her ship rammed into the alien vessel. The nuclear explosion vaporized both ships. "One down," Amy reported from the Liberty. Ruth made it to her escape pod safely. The mining vessel Iron Lady used a different approach. It pretended to be damaged and drifting helplessly. When a Corvan ship approached to investigate, the Iron Lady suddenly came to life and fired mining charges directly into the enemy's hull. The alien ship broke apart like it had been hit by a giant sledgehammer. Commander Tony Williams, who had joined the fleet as an engineer, led a boarding action that would have horrified the civilized galaxy. His team used cutting torches to break into a Corvan dreadnought, then fought their way to the bridge with nothing but assault rifles and determination. "The alien computers can't handle our unpredictability," Tony reported over the radio. "Their tactical systems keep crashing when we do something they don't expect." Medical Officer Dr. Karen Foster treated wounded crew members aboard the Liberty while coordinating with other ships. Jake, we're taking casualties, but we're winning. The enemy is completely confused by our tactics. The Corvin fleet, designed to fight elegant energy weapon duels, found themselves in the middle of a brawl. Human ships rammed them, boarded them, and attacked from directions that their computers said were impossible. Worse, their own weapons seemed less effective against the thick, crude armor of the converted civilian vessels. Communications. Specialist Eddie Collins intercepted enemy transmissions and translated them for Jake. Captain, the Corvin commander, is requesting instructions from his superiors. He says he's never seen anything like our attack patterns. What are they telling him? Jake asked. To retreat and regroup, Eddie replied. They're calling our tactics chaotic and undisciplined. Jake laughed. They say that like it's a bad thing. By the end of the battle, the human fleet had destroyed 18 Corvin dreadnoughts, while losing only 4 of their own ships. More importantly, they had rescued dozens of crew members from escape pods, proving that even their seemingly suicidal tactics could be survivable with proper planning. As the surviving enemy ships retreated, Jake received messages from across the galaxy. The Sorek had destroyed 3 more mining operations. The Delphus had shared the locations of Corvin supply bases. Even some species that had remained neutral were beginning to question the Empire's strength. Jake, Helen said as she reviewed the battle reports, do you realize what we've started? It's not just about Earth anymore. The entire galaxy is beginning to rebel against the Corvin Empire. Jake looked out at the stars where alien civilizations were finding their courage. Good. Maybe it's time the universe learned that bullies only stay in power as long as people are afraid to fight back. Peter Grant joined him at the observation window. What's our next move, Jake? Jake thought about the scattered enemy fleets, the growing rebellion, and the opportunity that was forming. Pete, how would you like to take this fight to the enemy's home? I think it's time we showed the Corvin Empire what happens when you threaten humanity. You mean attack their capital world? Peter asked. I mean end this war, Jake replied. And show the galaxy that sometimes the smallest ship can rock the biggest empire. The final battle began at the edge of the Corvin home system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, looking at the largest fleet he had ever seen. 200 enemy ships surrounded Corvin Prime, the Empire's capital world. At the center of the formation was a massive ship that looked more like a space station than a vessel. That's Emperor Zaxnine's flagship, Dr. Helen Brooks said, studying her instruments. It's called the Dominator. The thing is 10 miles long and has enough firepower to destroy an entire solar system. Well, that's not intimidating at all, Commander Ben Parker said sarcastically. He had been working for days to keep the Liberty's systems running. The ship showed battle damage from weeks of fighting, but it was still ready for combat. Jake wasn't alone this time. Behind the Liberty came the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. 50 ships from Earth, led by Vice Admiral Peter Grant. 30 vessels from the reptilian Sorek, their hulls painted with symbols of rebellion. 20 ships from the aquatic Delphus, their crews eager for revenge against their former masters. Even the crystal beings called Valeth had sent ships to join the fight. This is it, Jake announced to his crew. Everything we fought for comes down to this battle. If we win, the Corvin Empire falls and every species in the galaxy goes free. If we lose, we won't lose, Lieutenant Commander Amy Sullivan said firmly. We've come too far to give up now. The enemy fleet began to move. The Corvin ships formed perfect battle lines, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Emperor Zaxnine's voice boomed across space, broadcast to every ship in both fleets. Primitive creatures, you have caused enough chaos in my empire. Surrender now and I will make your deaths quick. Continue to resist, and I will destroy every world you have ever called home. Jake stepped forward and opened a communication channel. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Liberty. I have a message for you, Emperor. No, you dare refuse me. Human, I am Zax-9, ruler of 1,000 worlds, commander of the greatest fleet in galactic history. And I'm Jake Morrison from Earth, Missouri," Jake replied calmly. "I've been fighting bullies my whole life, and you're just another bully with fancier toys." The Emperor's mechanical voice filled with rage. "Destroy them all. Leave nothing alive." A battle erupted across the entire star system. Energy beams and plasma bolts lit up space like fireworks. The human fleet scattered in all directions, refusing to fight in the organized formations that the Corvan expected. Allied ships from a dozen species joined the chaos, each fighting in their own unique way. Engineering Chief Tony Williams kept the Liberty's engines running as the ship twisted and turned through enemy fire. "Captain, hull temperature is rising. We can't take much more of this punishment. Just keep us moving, Tony," Jake ordered. "Amy, target that command ship. Time to cut off the head of the snake." The Liberty began fighting its way toward Emperor. Zax-9's flagship. The massive vessel was protected by dozens of smaller ships, but the human warship carved through them like a knife through paper. Behind them, the converted civilian ships from Earth pressed their own attacks. Medical officer Dr. Corinne Foster worked frantically to treat wounded crew members while the ship bucked and rolled under enemy fire. "Jake, we're taking heavy casualties, but the crew is holding together because they know what we're fighting for," Jake replied. "Freedom isn't free, Corinne. Sometimes you have to pay for it in blood." Communications Specialist Eddie Collins intercepted enemy transmissions. "Captain, the Corvan fleet is starting to break apart. Some of their ships are retreating. Others are surrendering to our allies." On the main screen, Jake could see the tide of battle turning. A group of Sauric ships had surrounded a Corvan dreadnought and were boarding it with mining equipment turned into weapons. Delphis vessels moved through space like schools of fish, coordinating their attacks with perfect timing. But the real breakthrough came when Commander Ruth Davis led a desperate charge in her converted freighter. She had survived her first ramming attack and volunteered for another dangerous mission. Her ship, loaded with nuclear weapons, raced straight toward the Emperor's flagship. "This is for everyone who died under Corvan rule," Ruth broadcast as her ship accelerated to maximum speed. The Dominator's defensive systems fired everything they had at the approaching freighter, but Ruth's ship was too small and fast to stop. At the last second, she ejected in an escape pod while her vessel struck the enemy flagship's power core. The explosion was visible from across the solar system. The mighty Dominator, pride of the Corvan Empire, cracked in half like a broken toy. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as power systems overloaded and ammunition stores detonated. "Emperor Zax-9's ship is breaking apart," Helen reported with amazement. The blast damaged the containment field around their power source. Jake realized what that meant. Everyone get away from that ship. Now. The Liberty and all nearby vessels retreated as fast as their engines could carry them. Behind them, the Emperor's flagship continued to come apart. The power source at its heart was a contained black hole, and the containment was failing. "Jake," Helen called out urgently, "if that black hole gets loose, it will destroy everything in the system." "Ben, we made sure it doesn't," Jake decided. He turned to his crew. "Ben, give me everything the engines have. Amy, plot a collision course with that power core." "Sir?" Amy looked shocked. "That's suicide." "Not if we time it right," Jake explained. "We hit the containment field at the exact moment it fails. Our ship's mass might be enough to collapse the black hole safely." Ben wiped sweat from his forehead. "Captain, that's either brilliant or completely insane. With humans, those are often the same thing," Jake replied. the Liberty raced toward the dying flagship, while the rest of the fleet retreated to a safe distance. Jake could see his crew working at their stations, each person doing their job, despite knowing they might not survive the next few minutes. 30 seconds to impact, Amy announced. All hands, this is the captain. Jake broadcast throughout his ship. It has been an honor serving with all of you. Tell the galaxy that humanity doesn't know how to quit. At the last second, something unexpected happened. The combined Allied fleet opened fire on the collapsing ship, adding their weapons to the Liberty's final attack. Hundreds of energy beams and kinetic projectiles struck the failing containment field at the exact same moment. Instead of releasing a destructive black hole, the combined impact caused the exotic matter to collapse on itself. The implosion created a brief new star that lit up the entire system. Before fading to nothing, the Liberty emerged from the explosion battered but intact. Around them, the surviving Corvin ships were surrendering or fleeing. The great empire that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years was finished. Damage report, Jake called out, hardly believing they had survived. We're hurt bad, but we're alive, Ben replied. Hull breaches on 3 decks, engines running at 30%, weapons offline. But we're still flying. Amy was crying as she hugged her station controls. Captain, we did it. The Empire is finished. Jake looked around at his crew, these ordinary people who had done extraordinary things. Then he looked out at space, where dozens of different species were celebrating together for the first time in galactic history. Send a message to Earth, he ordered. Tell them the war is over. Tell them humanity is free, and tell them something else. What, sir? Eddie asked. Jake smiled as he watched alien ships working together to rescue survivors from both sides of the battle. Tell them that sometimes the smallest ship really can rock the entire universe. All it takes is the courage to try. The UE's Liberty, battered and scarred, but still flying, began its journey home. Behind them, a new age of freedom was beginning across the galaxy. The warship that had started as a joke had become a legend, and humanity had earned its place among the stars.